In 1914, the world went to war. 37 million people died. In 1939, the world went to war again. 75 million people died. Historians will tell you these wars were started by nationalism, by ideology, by the assassination of an archduke, by the rise of a dictator. They are not wrong, but they are not telling you everything. Because behind every war, there is a bill. Soldiers need weapons. Weapons cost money. And money, always, throughout all of human history, comes from somewhere. This is the story of where it came from. This is the story of a group of 12 men who sat in a private room in Zurich in 1907 and made a decision that would shape the next 40 years of human history. You will not find their names in any textbook. You will not find their organization in any official record. But their fingerprints, if you know where to look, are on everything. This is the story of the Meridian Group. And what they did is the most extraordinary act of financial manipulation in the history of the modern world.
The year is 1907. The location, a private dining room on the top floor of a hotel in Zurich, Switzerland. 12 men are seated around a table. Their names are not important. What is important is what they represent. Between them, they control banking institutions in 7 countries. They hold significant shares in the largest steel manufacturers in Europe. They have direct financial relationships with 3 sitting governments and indirect influence over 4 more. They are not politicians. They are not generals. They are not kings. They are financiers. And in 1907, financiers were the most powerful people on earth, precisely because nobody was watching them. The meeting lasted 6 hours. No minutes were taken, no record was kept. One participant would later refer to it in a private letter discovered decades after his death only as the Thursday Arrangement. What was arranged on that Thursday would take 7 years to begin and 22 years to complete. The core of it was simple, as the most consequential things often are. Europe was moving toward conflict. The financiers in that room could see it clearly. The military buildups, the political tensions, the collapsing alliances. War was coming. The question they were asking, the question that changed everything, was not how to stop it. The question was, who would pay for it? And more importantly, who would be paid?
The Meridian Group did not start the First World War. Let that be clear. What they did was something more subtle, and in many ways, more disturbing. They positioned themselves to profit from it regardless of who won. Through a network of holding companies, shell corporations, and private investment vehicles spread across Switzerland, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, all 3 neutral countries, the group maintained financial relationships with arms manufacturers on both sides of the conflict. When a British soldier fired a shell, the metal in that shell may have passed through a supply chain partially owned by the same financial network that supplied the German factory making the shell fired back at him. This was not illegal. In 1914, international financial law was almost non-existent. By 1960, 2 years into the war, the Meridian Group's combined holdings had increased in value by an estimated 400%. 400%! While the fields of France filled with the dead. But here is where the story becomes truly remarkable. Because in 1917, with the war still raging and no end in sight, the group did something nobody expected. They began funding the peace. In late 1917, a series of anonymous donations began flowing into the diplomatic backchannels that were quietly negotiating an end to the war. Private funds, untraceable. Why would they fund peace? Because peace, for a financier who has correctly anticipated it, is even more profitable than war. The reconstruction of Europe after the First World War required capital on a scale the world had never seen before.
new infrastructure, new industry, new national debt borrowed from private banks at interest. The Meridian Group was positioned to provide all of it. By 1923, 4 years after the war ended, the group's influence had expanded from 7 countries to 14.
They were not in the newspapers. They were not in the parliaments. They were in the loan agreements, in the infrastructure contracts, in the private meetings between finance ministers who never spoke publicly about who was really in the room. And then, just as Europe was beginning to stabilize, something happened that the group had not fully anticipated. The Great Depression of 1929 collapsed the global financial system, and in the chaos that followed, a new kind of politics emerged. A politics that the group, for the first time in its history, did not fully control. By 1933, the group was facing a problem it had never encountered before. The rise of nationalist governments in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, was creating a new kind of financial actor, one that did not play by the established rules. The group could not stop what was coming, but it could, once again, position itself. Through intermediaries and proxies too numerous and complex to detail here, elements of the Meridian Group's financial network continued to operate throughout the 1930s in ways that provided economic breathing room to governments that were, even then, clearly moving toward a second catastrophic war. What is not contested is this. When the Second World War began in 1939, the Meridian Group's financial infrastructure was, once again, positioned on multiple sides of the conflict. And once again, as the world burned, the accounts grew.
Organization ceased to exist in 1947, or at least that is when the last traceable reference to it appears in the private correspondence of its surviving members. What happened to its assets? Estimated at somewhere between $2 and $4 billion in 1947 values, is not known. What happened to its members? Most of whom died in the 1950s and 60s as unremarkable elderly men in comfortable houses in Switzerland and Luxembourg, is also not fully known. No trial was ever held. No official investigation was ever opened. No government ever publicly acknowledged the group's existence. The world moved on. And the Thursday arrangement, the decision made by 12 men in a Zurich hotel room in 1907, remained exactly where they had always intended it to remain, in the dark. Now, what do we do with a story like this? Who pays for wars? Not the soldiers, not the governments, not the people who wave flags and sing anthems. The money, always in every war in human history, comes from somewhere specific, from someone specific, from people who calculated very carefully what the return on investment would be, and who understood that the most durable power is the power that nobody can see. If this story unsettled you, good. Subscribe. Because next week, we go deep.